Hey everyone, welcome to Culture Time. Now, today's episode is how to make starter yeast. It's a very simple process, straightforward. I'm going to explain the ingredients and the process. So you just need two basic ingredients, and that's water and flour. So I have my water here, I have my white flour, plain white flour. You can get it anywhere. Okay, and I have my jar. Now the jar is a half-gallon jar. I chose this size jar because I use the starter yeast continuously, so I'm going to be making a lot, or at least continuing the process a lot. Okay, it's also nice, it has little markings and everything like that, so you can see the quantities. Okay, so here's a short list of basically everything you'll need. If you want to see it, you can just pause the video. Okay, so this is all of the tools. Like I said, it's very simple. This is my stirrer. I like it because it's nice and long. It has the holes, ideal for stirring. This is a simple twist-in cap. It comes a two-part cap. It comes with the mason jar. I like it because I'll show you at the end of it why it's particularly nice for using this. This is my measuring cup. It's 1 cup measuring cup. That's what I'm going to be using for the water. And then I have my flour here. Plain white flour. I've tried this with other flours before, coconut flour, almond flour. It basically works with anyone, and you'll have a slight different taste with it. But for now, I'm just going to use plain white flour because it's easily accessible. So I'm going to use 3 1/3 cups, and I'm just going to dump them into the jar. Now, in case you didn't really know about starter yeast is actually a living organism. So there's no definite method to making it. When I say that, I mean it's not necessarily measurements, but more of a rule of thumb that I follow. Okay, so that's 2. It's filling up pretty nicely. And that rule of thumb is based on the container that you're using. You're going to need to use basically half-half. So half flour, half water. And because, of course, flour is a lot lighter than water, that's why I'm using 3 of the 1/3 cups and just 1 cup of the water. So that should give it a pretty even balance to start off with. Now, you don't have to worry about getting this perfect. Yeast is in basically everything. When I release more fermentation videos, I'm going to go in a bit more depth with that. But basically what you're using is the yeast that comes on the flour. Okay, so you just pour it in there, and you see all that hardening to the bottom, all that white patches. You're just going to take your stirrer and try to get that as smooth as possible, as well mixed as possible. Now to do this, you might want to hold your container, but my cameraman is lazy, so just gotta make do. Okay, so you don't have to worry too much about getting even consistency. Just try to break down and mix the water with all that flour, because that's what the yeast is going to feed off of. So because this is a living organism, it means 2 things. First thing is it's going to grow, and second thing, it's going to eat. Now you basically feed it with more flour and water. So throughout the days, around the same time, about 24 hours, you're going to come back and do the same process. So I'll show you. Now with this cover, this lid, I like it because as a living thing, it also needs oxygen or air, but you don't want anything getting in it. So you don't want to put the lid on tight if you are using these kind of lid. You just want to loosen it a bit so it has that bit of pull. So as it needs to breathe, the lid would lift slightly, letting oxygen get inside of it. You don't have to worry about that little bit of cake on the side either. They'll just fall down, trust me. Okay, so that's the first step. And now the next day, we have it here. You want to keep it in a nice damp spot, not damp, dry spot. A nice cool spot in a cupboard or something. And you see these bubbles? These bubbles indicate that the yeast is actually activating. Okay, that means it's alive. So that's basically what you want to see. Now if you notice, you'll still see that white spot, a bit of white buildup I missed to the bottom. You don't really need to worry about that because you're going to be mixing this every day. As you mix it, you're going to be putting oxygen as well as you're going to add more food into it. Okay, so as you can see, all the bubbles, All the bubbles is the activity. So that's what you want to look for in good, healthy starter yeast. Okay. Now, starter yeast is essentially used for a lot of sourdough recipes. It's not like regular, dry yeast for baking bread and everything like that. But of course, it's all natural, especially depending on what flour you use. I know some people who mill their own flour, so that takes it up to another level. So you see, you just want to take your stirrer, go down there and just loosen up all of that hard flour until you get like a nice consistency. You see now, because the yeast has eaten a lot of the flour and broken it down, you see it's very easy to stir. Okay, it's not exactly a foam, but it's more liquid than not. Now, it's a tricky ratio to this as you feed, because if you put too much water, the yeast isn't going to use all of it. It's just going to let the water, you might see a little bit of water floating to the top of it. And in a case like that, just don't add any water the next time you feed it. Mix it. When you see it, mix it up, and just don't add any water. Just add some flour to try to balance it out, and then see if it just catches itself, if it adjusts. So it's more of a, getting a feel for it than anything. So I'm going to add just 2 1/3 cups, and then I'm going to add some more water, because like you saw before, it wasn't waterlogged or anything like that. So just put the flour in there, and then I'm going to add the water. Now, like I said, this is used a lot for a lot of sourdough, actually mainly for sourdough recipes. But because the method of making sourdough bread is a bit, I would say, long, there are a lot of other methods. One of my favorite is sourdough pancakes, which I'm going to be releasing the video for after this one. Okay, so you want to just leave that, add that water, and then you're going to mix it, and then you're going to put it back, and then you're going to watch it grow. Now, what some people recommend, they recommend you dispose of half of your batch, and before you feed it. So every time before you feed it, you dispose of some, and then you add more water and flour to feed it. Now, I don't particularly like that method because I use a lot of it, or I could use a lot of it. What I usually do, I would take some out, if I take out any at all, when it gets a bit too high. I would take some out, and I would just use it in a recipe or something like that, and then I'd feed the rest of it. But besides that, that's why I like these very long, tall jars, so you could just continuously feed it. It's also a good, gift, for people who are healthy inclined, or people who are trying to get healthy or experiment, or even for kids. So you could just donate some of your starter yeast to get somebody else started in case they're having difficulties with it. So the next day, as you can see, we have a lot of activity, and if you look at the levels on the side of the jar, you can see that it's grown or expanded. You see the bubbles to the top, and you see the bottom, but there isn't much activity. So that's not a problem. You don't have to worry about that. A lot of people panic when they see these kind of things. They believe that it's doing something wrong, or it's not the right temperature. You just want to keep it in a nice cool place. Okay, so just mix it if you see things like that. So this was a very short video. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe.